I have been preparing for the GMAT and CAT, and actually I've given the exam, CAT, both of them being in 2021. And I am currently placed at ZS Associates. I scored a 99.4 percentile on CAT and a 730 on the GMAT. That ZS gives a very competitive package as well, which is what pushes students to go for it. There's a CV shortlisting first, and there's an aptitude test, and followed by 1 or 2 interviews depending upon the site. I would urge you guys to understand the whole funda, the whole concept of placement. Consulting firms look for peaks in your resume.
So hi everyone, welcome to Upscale Talks. So we are in the middle of a series wherein we have brought in some of your seniors and they will be sharing their journeys. How did they land into their dream companies and dream profiles? For today's session, we have Deepanshu Verma with us. So he is currently placed at ZS Associates, and he has also been preparing for CAT and GMAT examinations. So Deepanshu, can you tell us more about yourself?
Hi Archit, thank you for the introduction. So, as Archit said, I have been preparing for the GMAT and CAT, and actually I've given the exam, CAT, both of them being in 2021. And I'm currently placed at ZS Associates. Initially it started out as a backup for me, but now it is one of the options that I'm considering moving forward.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Archit for this opportunity, and I really hope you all are able to get something from the session.
Sure, Deepanshu. So moving ahead with the session. A lot of people don't know much about ZS. So they know that this is a firm that is hiring for, all the profiles. You will be telling us more about the profiles. So can you please tell us more about the company in specific?
So ZS Associates is one of the biggest consulting firms. It is based out of the US, as you guys may know. But what sets them apart from the big 3 or the big 4, let's say, is that they almost specifically cater to pharmaceutical clients. That is their biggest client base. But one of the good factors, which all you all know in consulting or in consulting companies that come to our college, is that ZS gives a very competitive package as well, which is what pushes students to go for it compared to some of the other, let's say, big 4 companies like EY, which offer a much lesser package on the other hand.
Sure, Deepanshu. So moving ahead with the presentation, now can you tell us more about the placement process and how did it started moving ahead with the placement, when the company gets listed on the forum wherein you apply for the company, and apart from that, what all was the interview all about? You can just tell us more on that, and can you just move ahead with the presentation as well?
Yeah, sure. So the main thing is that ZS was one of the first companies to come to our college, and that's what happens. One of the first non-tech companies, to be very clear. And what happens is when one non-tech company starts coming, I believe the first one to come was Bain, or there was another company that came before, but the first biggest company that came was Bain. And subsequently after, quite a few companies came within the same month. So I guess ZS maybe came by the end of August or the beginning of September, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
And the process, the companies, all of the companies, I'm going to keep it as general as possible so that it can apply to quite a lot of you. All of the companies try to keep the process as short and as concise as possible, so that there is no clash with other companies. There was another issue actually which happened with ZS this year, that their process extended for much longer than it should have, but I'll move on to that later. I mean, that shouldn't be an issue for the upcoming year for you guys. But that was maybe a technical snag on their end, and there was a lot of issues considering COVID this year, and maybe that's why there was a little bit of a delay. But yes, the process again of ZS, I would say, was very intensive compared to the other companies. The other companies, on the other hand, they just had a CV shortlisting, and this is the basic process that they follow. There's a CV shortlisting first, and there's an aptitude test, and followed by 1 or 2 interviews, depending upon the size of the company and how many people they're looking to hire. But ZS, on the other hand, this was a specific process that they hired for 2 profiles. The one was business operations associate, and the other was data analytics associate. So what I would urge you guys to do, if you're planning to apply to ZS, when the company comes on campus, you should definitely go through the JD, the job description for both of these profiles, because they're drastically different. And so is the enrollment process for both of these profiles. If you opt for the business operations associate, the case study that you'll be given will be completely different from data analytics. The test, the aptitude test that you have to give will be different. And the competition that you face with respect to the students that you give it with will be completely different. So you have to know what sort of profile you would want later. I personally was selected for the business operations associate profile because I do not have a data analytics background. And moving forward, the process was primarily, again, in two stages. Let's divide it into two stages. The first one was a three-stage. The first one itself was a three-stage preliminary test. So we were given a link to a test. I think after CV shortlisting, we were given a link to a test and we were given about a time period of 8 hours. And we had to complete 3 tests consecutively, one after the other. So you finish one test and you move on to the other. Obviously, if you clear that test, you get the link for the other one. So what happened was the first test, being the usual as most of the companies had, was an aptitude test. Pretty straightforward, nothing too much to worry about. And since I was already preparing for CAT, as Arshit had mentioned, so it was not something too tough or something that I had to take too much. I had to prepare too much for. Moving forward, there was a small caselet segment, I would say, where we were given a case, and within a stipulated time, we had to answer 6 to 7 multiple choice questions, or what you believe is the best answer. It was not a very comprehensive case study as we generally have in the interviews, but it was a very simple caselet, as in some data, some information is given to you, and you have to choose the best alternative out of some of the options for each of the questions that come forward. Moving forward, after that, there was maybe, I think, a day or two after, we had the first case interview, which was with one of the managerial position people at the company. And I was very fortunate that my final interview was on the same day as my first interview was, and that was with someone at the partner level. I'll go deeper into the highlights of the interviews at a later stage in the process.
Yeah, sure, Deepanshu. It would also be nice that if you can, share some experience out of it and let our users know how can they handle the situation well. As in, you also mentioned that the process was delayed for a longer period of time. So, how did you manage yourself in that time? Because a lot of people watching this video might be going through the same process.
Yeah, sure. So for that, I would urge you guys to understand the whole the whole concept of placements. So the placement scene and in any college is going to be a very hectic time for most of the students. And you cannot let yourself be down or be beaten down by any one company that does not shortlist you, or any specific company that you wanted to get into which does not shortlist you. I'd like to share a personal experience. I personally wanted to apply to Bain, but unfortunately, I don't know what sort of reason it would be, but I did not even get shortlisted for the test, and I was very affected by it. But as soon as I understood that there are so many opportunities, there's a wide array of opportunities that every student is going to be getting in the placement scenario, you understand that you should not be so stuck up or so adamant about one particular role or one particular company, because that if you go with that mindset, you'll always be cool and composed throughout the placement process. Maybe for one company, 2 companies, 5 companies, 10 companies, how many ever of them you sit for. This is the core concept that you have to keep in your mind, which will keep you composed throughout the entire process, and hopefully, by God's grace, you will be able to get whichever company you want to. Now moving on to a little bit of the specifics about the ZS process per se. So I've kind of divided it into, let's say, 3 segments. The first one being, what does ZS, or in more general term, what does a consulting company look for? Now you must have heard this from quite a lot of your seniors that consulting firms look for peaks in your resume. Now, how do you define a peak? A peak is somewhere where you have exceeded the average of your cohort. So let's say your peaks are in academics. If you have heavily overperformed in your 10th, 12th or your graduation, if you have an 8.5 or 9 CGPA, that is a big peak. Because consulting firms try to look for all-rounded personalities in their new hires. Another peak could be your positions of responsibility. Any position where they can see you were entrusted with some work or with leading a group of people and you did that successfully. And that could be a very great talking point also in your interview. Any sort of issues that you came across during any of the events, let's say there's NG Fest, there's the LFC. There's multiple events that unfortunately didn't happen for you guys, but that do happen in colleges, and there's a lot to learn from these events, and which can be a major talking point in your interviews. The third and fourth being internships and projects. Again, I urge you all, since right now presently we're in the time of COVID, so we are having college from home. So it is a great opportunity to get internships from home and try to upskill yourself as much as possible. Later on, maybe moving forward, college is going to move to an offline mode and you'll be able to do only those 2 or 3 internships which are meant to be done throughout the college time. But make sure that you do internships which provide value, not just to your resume on paper, but to yourself as a person, to make you understand how the market works and how the corporate world works, to make you understand what sort of life you want ahead for yourself. And in extracurriculars, I strongly urge you guys to go for everything and anything that's possible. There are multiple websites like Dare to Compete where you can find competitions and a lot of things. I personally went for a lot of case studies with my friends back in my first and second years, and it was a very, very enriching experience. And that kind of went on to define my liking or my inclination towards consulting as well. So I would say that was one of the best experiences throughout my college life, going for those competitions. Now, the second thing that these consulting firms look for is a strong aptitude and analytical skills. You cannot be expected to know how to solve a case properly as in a very, very structured manner right off the bat. But what they need is the basics, the grassroots levels that you would require to be able to build this skill later, moving into any company, which is a strong aptitude and analytical skills. You should be able to think methodically, structurally, should be able to break down a problem. Whenever you hear a problem statement, you should be able to break down a problem into its constituent problems and be able to solve each of them in whatever required manner possible. And the third, I would say the most important, but the most underrated one would be the ability to communicate your ideas. You should be always, because consulting at the end, moving up the pyramid in the is a front end role. It is a people facing role. So you, in a sense, are an image of the company, and the company wants to portray its image as good or as well as possible. So always make sure that you work on soft skills like presentation, communication, because these will go a long way. Just not help you in your interview right now, but much more ahead in your career and other subsequent interviews that you might face as well. So you should always be able to communicate your ideas in a very clear and concise manner and not get flustered or confused in these testing situations. And the absolute holy Bible for all consulting companies is guesstimates and case studies. I'm pretty sure a lot of my peers would have stressed a lot on this fact, and the importance of these is just absolutely paramount, because this is what is the easiest way for the consulting companies to understand if in the future you will be able to solve the proper level of case study that you will be given later. It's a very fun and simple thing to do. It won't require too much of your time, and all it requires is a structured and logical thinking. A guesstimate, for example, is a simple question that can be given to you. It can range from anything like guesstimate the number of trees in our campus at DTU. So what they want to see is not the exact value of the number of trees that are there in our campus, but what they want to see is how would you break this problem down into small packets or parcels, and how would you solve each of that? So, for example, as this example as I've given, the number of trees in DTU. What you would do is maybe one approach could be finding the area of DTU, and then maybe making an educated guess about what percentage of it would be covered in greenery, and then making another guess, or maybe the square footage of area that one tree covers, and subsequently dividing it into smaller and smaller portions until you can come to an educated guess. That's where the word comes from: guess plus estimate. So you're supposed to make an educated guess. You need not know the answers, because there have been wild guesstimates like find out the number of planes that go above the Delhi airport in a day. So they don't want you to go and sit near the airport and count the number of planes that go by in a day, but they want you to make an educated guess about what the ballpark figure could be. Saying a value of 1 million planes going over Delhi airport in a day does not make sense at all, and that shows them that you do not have an idea about how to create or how to structurally solve a problem. Along the same lines, you have the case studies as well. Definitely, I would encourage you all to make groups with your fellow classmates or other friends that you may have in college who also want to sit for non-tech placements. Case studies, find case books from anywhere. There's loads of material available online as well as from your seniors. You can contact us anytime, and we'll be really happy to provide you case books. Just go through any cases, understand what sort of broad structure is there into it, and then you can just simply, again, like estimates, break down the problem into its constituent solutions, and then solve all of them. Yeah.
Okay, so Deepanshu, that was a lot of, you shared a lot of your experience. But I have one more question in my bank for you, because you mentioned in the starting that, you were preparing for more of a CAT and focusing on GMAT in particular. So now, how was this different, getting into ZS? And a lot of our viewers might be going through this same process, right? So they're in the back of their mind, they might be having that, yeah, I want to, go for CAT and, do an MBA from IM ABC or whatsoever maybe the reason they are having. So how would you recommend them? What should they do at this point in time?
What I would say is, I've seen quite a lot of my peers and seniors as well who have completely foregone of the placement process and said that I'm totally going to focus myself on CAT, which might be a good strategy for you. I really cannot comment on what your personal goals might be. But what I believe is that it's always good to have a backup plan. I personally did not prepare that much for the ZS interview per se. The aptitude was taken care of by CAT. The case studies and guesstimates, I had a rough or a fair idea from my past expeditions with different competitions that I went to with my friends. So I personally did not have to have that proper sit down and prepare time. I just had to go through the interviews and just be able to communicate very freely and properly about what my ideas are and what I wish to do later. So it's always better to have that sort of backup, that safety net, and that, I would say, increases or improves your performance in these competitive exams as well, because you do not have that added pressure while giving the exam that what if this does not work, what if this does not happen. You always have that safety net, if not in the front of your head, in the back of your head, giving you that support or giving you that push that even if things don't go according to plan, which they rarely ever do, you will have something to fall back on. And that is sort of the mentality that I gave both my GMAT and the CAT with. And I'm really glad with my performance, even though I believe that I could have performed a little better than this. I scored a 99.4 percentile on CAT and a 730 on the GMAT. The GMAT also, I just gave it just to apply to the ISB YLB program. If any of you all want to connect and get to know about that as well, so I wouldn't mind. And that was pretty much it. But again, it's all about keeping yourself in a safe space and in a calm state of mind while giving these exams, and while obviously sitting in the placement process as well. And as Archit asked that how are these processes different? Not very different, I would say. When you study quantitative aptitude for math, for the CAT, and the things like DILR or VARC, all these things help you in one way or another in your placement process as well. Something that's very different is the guesstimates and case studies, which is something that you will have to exclusively do for the placements, because that's not going to come anywhere else. But it's a very fun thing to do. It's like a little game that you can play with your friends in a group. While having fun, you can solve these, and it's not something too hectic that you need to be worried about, or that you need to sit down and prepare alone, as is an exam in the college.
First of all, Deepanshu, congratulations to you on scoring such wonderful marks in both CAT and as well in the GMAT. And also, we would be connecting with you once again to let our audience know about the CAT and GMAT specifically. So, and also thank you to you on joining us as a mentor.
Thank you so much, Arjit. It's been a pleasure and a great opportunity. And if any of you guys, whoever's watching this video, want to connect and want to know more in detail about ZS or CAT or GMAT or any of the questions that you might have, either Arjit or me or the other mentors who are here at Upscale Talks would love to help you out with your queries. And all the best on your journey ahead.
So thank you, Deepanshu. That would be all from the session. Thank you all for watching this video.